know that most users download Windows versions, 95% or so, like the normal distribution is when you get insights from access to the websites. Those users who are not participating in the survey, who do not care about the program at all, they won't be heard, and we have no way to access them. So I support the need for it. I doubt it is possible even when we have a platform, because it all boils down to trust. And I don't see how you generate trust with talking about legals, with talking about um, uh, money. I personally think the trust comes with the news. If you get a prime time report on your preferred TV station, and they talk about a company that holds your data and is an alternative to Google, then you get the trust from users. A little bit exaggerating, of course. That's also not a question. The question comes to the technical part. Thing is, you talk about male female, this gender thing, and well, yes, it is something that is interesting, and it is a start to combine data. You get demographic data like gender, and connect it to some other data that you get from whatever source you have, let's say income. What I would like to have is a even more complex input, not just gender and usage at the program, like how often people start writer, and even more than how often they print something. I would even go further into detail and want to know what sequence of commands are run. So how often a certain command is being undone. So how often do people, let's say, format a piece of text or run a command to format and undo this command, meaning they have some kind of made a mistake here. So to know what a mistake is, I need to know what undo is, and I need to know what happens before undo, which is a bit complicated. I guess this one has to be implemented into the program. But then it comes to the collection of data, and that is something that might be challenging. Still not a question, sorry.
I can try to answer it.
Yes, it was way too much.
You
Sorry.
could keep me busy for 90 minutes with all what you just said. But so just super quickly on the
three topics.
Okay, super quickly on the trust stuff. That is an incredibly difficult problem that we've thought a lot about. But this is one of those things where we're like a little bit into, like, of course, we talk to everybody we can grab about this. But yeah, we have a little bit of an echo chamber. That's why we do feel like it's time we drive these ideas a bit further. So in terms of like what code we've actually written, I would say we're probably like 1 or 2% there. But there are algorithms, there are systems for trust models that I think could work really well here. And their trust is not kind of what you talked about, like trust in the brand. Is Polypod something I trust? But I do think, like, I spent, like, before I joined Poly, I actually didn't want to do another CTO type job for a while. I was a bit burned out by it. But the 8 years before that, I was basically building like privacy protection, tracking protection tools and ad blockers. So like I spent 8 years like butting my head against how to improve users' privacy. Ultimately, that was at least the main cause I cared about. And my solution is we can't. Like it's the absolute tip of the iceberg. There's so little you can do in terms of just blocking some tracking scripts and so on in the browser. It's meaningless. So I think the only solution to the problem of diminishing user privacy is twofold. A, they need to understand what's going on, and B, there needs to be legal enforcement of this, right? So yeah, I could go into the super deep, but that's sort of what I arrived at, which is why I think it's really more about users of this need to understand that the data is on their device. They need to understand when it leaves the device, what happens to it, what the implications should be, and whether they trust that actor. But yeah, not to go too deep into that, what you also mentioned is the sort of stuff you're interested in, and the difference between talking to users and having that data. So I'm not really a data scientist, but in my experience, there are like different types of, say, user research, right? So you might want to have a large number of people give you data like what's the most commonly used command before undo, because then you can take a closer look, right? This like broad data gives you indications of what to maybe interview a few users over. Like, okay, a lot of people press undo after they, I don't know, enter the formula. I'm oversimplifying, but I guess. But if a lot of people press undo after entering a formula, then you could sit down with a couple of users and do like this qualitative research and like understand how they use it and watch them and see what they stumble over, and then try to release a new version. And then again, check with the data to see if the metrics improve, right? Do fewer people press undo after entering a formula now, after these changes were made? So it's a bit, yeah, that's sort of how I think all of this plays together. And in yeah, still not a question, I guess, but in the end, it comes down to, do you have, let's say, a significant enough amount of users that are willing to send you that data, right? The list of commands they used. This is not something Poly can do for you, by the way. This is like every single person writing a piece of software still needs to add these like telemetry hooks. So however you implemented undo, some chain of command pattern or whatever, you need to basically record the data there locally, right? We can't help you there. That's not what Poly does. Poly is just the like distributed database and like a processing tool you can keep it on. So basically what a lot of companies keep, where they store all this raw data and run clever algorithms on it, that's what the Polypod is. That's what the platform is, right? But you still need to feed into it. Just like if you use a, I don't know, Google Firebase or something, you still need to figure out what events to send when. Okay, I'm gonna shut up.
I think just let me add a couple of words on the trust thing, because I think that's the essential situation. Yeah, I mean, if people trust the whole thing, then they will be willing, at least a large amount of them will be willing to sort of spend their data for user experience evaluations and improvements. Yeah, I mean so it actually boils down to the trust problem. And this is where I see the free software world actually as playing a crucial role, because we actually do have a good name when it comes to privacy and trust. Yeah, and this is what I try to sort of market for here. Yeah, what I try to win you for is, if we as a free software community join together and create feature depots that we combine with our name, then we can actually achieve something which has happened, for example, in the ecological movement, where you have like good brands that sort of certify this is a Demeter product, or Bioland, or whatever brand is appropriate in your country. But if you go to the supermarket, you'll see, this is Demeter, so this will be ecologically okay if I buy this. Yeah. And this is something which we as free software community can actually do. Yeah, if we join together and sort of be a critical partner and monitor the whole thing, and at one point are willing to sort of combine our name and say, okay, look, we believe the Poly technology is agnostic enough that we trust our feature sets, our feature depots, sorry. Yeah, so we offer a feature depot which is monitored by us. Yeah, where we see that everything that goes in there is actually, not exploiting. It's doing the good thing, the right thing. Yeah, then we can establish a layer of trust on top of the sort of agnostic technology of Poly. And by this this is a process. Yeah, this is nothing where you can, turn a switch or something and the world looks different. But if we build up sort of a trusted feature depot and convince our users, then the whole idea can actually win the world. Yeah, because but we need an additional mechanism, and this is what we actually can add to the whole system. Our good name, the trust people have in us treating privacy the right way. And this is what we need to, I mean, we need to have the highest standards. This is why we actually have to exactly look at what Poly does. And you know, if we're not convinced, we shouldn't actually mingle our name with them. Yeah, but if they do the right thing, this is a great chance.
I hope I don't crush the discussion, but it is something that is might be of interest for someone who is listening. We have just a few people here in Jitsi, but the stream is also going to YouTube, and there might be more people. So I'm reading in parallel what who's on IRC, and maybe this person from my talk yesterday is also here in this video. The question was, can't we submit a survey to the user? So the question is, if I have question to the users that are not something for collecting data, it says, how would Polypoly handle to push questions to users rather than get data back to and distribute it? Or isn't it part of this project?
It's part of this, yeah. So yeah, first of all, to kind of make everything a little bit more complicated, like we're kind of even to the degree of what Björn mentioned in terms of like the enterprise and so on. Like right now, we're working on a lot of stuff that we kind of don't care about, but we just feel like we need to do it, right? So we also have this like standalone Polypod product that we're building, which is basically the pod where you keep your data. But ultimately, what we really focus on is the infrastructure below it. Right, and that's also why we do dual licensing, for example, because we want the Polypod itself to be kind of as widely integrated as possible. Because it's similar to Matrix, right? You would just have like a client library in there. The system is not there, and it's not on any single backend. It's a decentralized system. So we would like to see a lot of Polypod clients. Like so, technically, there are different paths. Like people have like the Polypod program on their desktop. And they also have a LibreOffice, and they connect, for example. That's one way. But we also want to offer, for example, an embeddable library. And it wouldn't even have to be our implementation, because what we really want to achieve is like, an infrastructure. And that's really, in my opinion, by definition, on the standards and protocols levels. We're just kind of doing the whole thing right now to kind of kickstart this economy. That said, we do have a functionality that we didn't finish yet, but we worked on it off and on to actually run these sort of surveys. And I guess surveys by definition do collect user data. But yeah, it's actually a comparatively simple use case of what the Polypod can do. The crux is, of course, that the submitted results, you want that raw data, right? So we don't have a mechanism at this point where you can, let's say, have a lot of people answer a survey and then get aggregated data back. So right now, if somebody answers a survey, the data goes right back to you, what they actually put in the survey. And this goes back to something that we call a polyconnect. It's like a server endpoint where you can send data, right? Normally, if we do, for example, something like this, crunching what sort of commands people run, this could be very well anonymized or like aggregated in a distributed fashion. But in this case, you would literally get the survey results from every participant to a server. So it's quite simple. Not their name, right? Just what they actually said in the survey.
Just a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Hi.
Yeah, that's exactly what Polypoly is actually for.
If I get it right,
solving all those problems. It's like what we as UX people actually we dreamt for many years. Yeah, I mean, at least if we are privacy concerned. Yeah, and we don't want to have the raw data on our servers. We don't want it. Yeah, it's like we don't want to know who this person is. We just want to know who our users are on an aggregated level. That's all that's of interest for us. Usually, yeah. What about the others? Do you have any questions? Is there
Yes, of
anything?
course.
Uwe was
You
trying to say
interrupted
something.
me. If I got it right, you have something like a local data collection mechanism,
Yeah,
and can
go ahead.
then throw some questions to this big sea of local data instances and get the answer back without
If you try to
transferring
speak,
any
then you're
single
muted.
data. And
1 second. So
So
I
what-
hear you, Uwe, but Björn doesn't.
Yeah.
Hear you. Something's weird.
something is weird.
But I hear you, so you
Okay.
can go on. I'll repeat the question.
So the first question I have is, you mentioned something like a floss feature depot. I don't have any idea what this could be. So what do you think about, or what do you mean with the floss feature depot?
Okay, so the question is, what is the feature depot, or what would a floss feature depot be? And again,
Yep.
there we come to kind of the higher levels of how we implement the whole thing right now. So right now we have this Polypod program, and it's essentially, it's just kind of the most feasible thing we can do right now. But in this program, you can run something that we call features, which are basically apps in another software, right? So it's like I don't know, like these plasma thingies, right? So it's just kind of like plugins, sort of extensions. And these features are basically installed from something called the feature depot, which is something like, I don't know, APT, right? It's a software repository. And anybody can run a software repository like this. So we want to run one, right? For the things that we built at PolyPoly. We have, for example, built the survey feature. We're going to build some other stuff. But we want, it is a system where basically, if people don't like PolyPoly, they can still use the system. Just not use our feature depot, probably not even use our very own Polypod implementation. They can use somebody else's. So it's all designed to be interchangeable. And that even goes into the whole setup with the foundation and everything. So it's kind of a long story, but there's a lot of checks and balances in place. That, yeah, I think I would talk too much about it, but we have these monthly PolyWatt events. If you're curious, there we can give the whole answer. So yeah, and in short, it would be like, let's say we have the Play Store, and somebody could make an F-Droid, to stay with the Android analogy here.
Okay, I wanted to ask some question in brief. Have you ever tried solutions like homomorphic encryption? In this way, the user's data is stored encrypted, but certain operations are possible on it. So let me ask more wide about the things you do. You're storing data either on many servers or things like that. But I think both security and privacy, and when we talk about data, it is very important to understand the encryption and things like that, because for example, if you are creating a library and you're collecting data or you're gathering data from people, whatever you do with this data, it is very important that are you encrypting it? How are you managing that data? How are you managing the libraries? For example, you're possibly providing a library or a plugin that I can add to my software, if I understood correctly. But what if the things go wrong with your software? We see that a lot of applications get hacked these days, and every software can face these problems. But when encryptions comes in, you're somehow you can trust it, because it is proved mathematically that, for example, it can face a lot of attacks, and it is based on some mathematical proofs. So I wanted to know have you ever worked on solutions like homomorphic encryption to privacy? And if you know that, if you worked on it, how it can relate to the thing you're doing to manage data privacy?
Okay, that homomorphic encryption sounds like something I kind of I was very interested in while working on basically ad blockers and tracking protections, because there the funny thing is, like the browsers and the platforms, they lock you out, right? Because everything's HTTPS, and like the limits, like what a browser extension and like an Android app can actually do got like reduced further and further by Google and the others. We couldn't do these like man in the middle sort of programs as well. So we also looked into, okay, what can we understand about the network traffic on encrypted information, right? So you still get the host name. What do we do with this? But there was a company that I think they were called Shine. They were a bit shady, and they claimed that they had a way of like kind of understanding the shape of the connection enough, even over like SSL connections, to do some meaningful ad and tracking protection. I didn't buy it. I could never, but yeah, anyway, the homomorphic encryption stuff sounds very interesting. I do have some experience with differential privacy, which I think is a very like lame solution, which basically means that you just create statistical noise, right? So if my device, it sends all the right data, but it also randomly sends some garbage data. And basically using like statistical methods on the other end, you can kind of factor out the noise everybody sends and still get meaningful answers. It's an interesting concept, but I think all of these things are sort of, we're kind of trying to avoid it because there is no data kept on servers. Like we don't have to worry too much about the encryption because it's all kept locally. And there, the security, like the attack surface is also distributed, right? So if I had, let's say, I don't know, let's say I had the laptops of 10,000 people in my house. Probably somebody would break into it, right? They would just kick in my door and get these 10,000 laptops because they're worth a lot of money. Turns out in my house, there's only a single laptop. So a normal door lock does it for me. I've never had a break-in into my house. And the same security concept sort of applies because the data is not kept in a central place. Everybody's in, like, of course, if you have the Polypod app, of course, it's locally encrypted. But the strength of the encryption doesn't matter so much because, okay, so what if somebody breaks into my device and gets the data of one guy? So what? Data is valuable at huge volume, and you can't economically break into so many people's devices unless we have like a absolutely insane security flaw. So that's sort of my quick answer to that. And also to, in general, I'm incredibly skeptical of any attempt of keeping encrypted data on central servers or even in public, right? Some people are trying to tackle the privacy problem by basically having encrypted data, encrypted very personal data, symmetrically encrypted personal data in public on a blockchain. That drives me nuts because encryptions get broken, right? Like if you put it on a blockchain, your symmetrically encrypted data is out there forever. It's like putting it all in a box with a lock that nobody knows how to crack and leaving it in the middle of the market. Like 10 years later, somebody's going to find a way to open that box and you can't take it back. It's already there. Like we don't want to put that box on the marketplace in the first place. You want to keep it safe. So that's my a bit long answer, sorry. But homomorphic encryption is something I'm going to Google because that sounds incredibly interesting, although not super applicable for like the main stuff of what we do.
Thank you. I had many more questions, but as possibly other want to ask, I don't ask them for now.
Okay, ask a question. I can hear you. I just need to get a package from the door. Always time.
Okay. If no other one wants to ask, let me ask another question. So if you're saving data in some kind of distributed way, the other thing that may concern the users is that what if your software gets attacked? For example, those you may have heard of those attacks on some software infrastructures in the US, and what do they call it? The source attack. I don't know what was the exact name for this kind of attack. For example, I want to say, what if your software gets attacked and something is injected inside your software, or either the binaries or even the source code. We hear these days that some people send some patches to open source projects that looks somehow normal in the first look, but when you look closely, they are not. And this happened for Linux and some other projects. What if your software gets compromised? I think that can be a real concern. And if you want to make sure everything is right, you have to think about it, and you should have provide some solutions. Yes, it is not economical to attack everyone, but when the software is the same, when someone attacks the software, the whole thing can be in danger.
Perhaps, Felix, before you answer, because you'll obviously will have to add something to what I'm going to say. One line of attack would obviously be the feature depot. Yeah, so if you obviously the feature depot allows you to sort of execute on your data. Yeah, so this is where sort of my idea comes into play, where I think we need to have very well curated feature depots just to avoid that any harm is being done through these feature depots. And that's sort of where my idea of sort of protecting at least this path of attack. I mean, if you install just any random feature you don't know about, then this feature can obviously by default do things you don't really want it to do. Yeah, so I'll go back to, I think, feature depots that you can really trust, where sort of LibreOffice and the free software community comes into play for me. On the other levels of attack, Felix, that's more your cup of tea.
There's a lot of, I see a lot of attack vectors, to be honest. So I was thinking, so I think like something that I thought a little bit about lately is how the world kind of changed from we own devices and we have documents, and we have documents we can edit through on multiple files usually, right? So the standards is at the level of the documents. When it comes to the web, it's full of standards. So there is a world where everybody can like replace an application, right? So I think overall, like if our infrastructure would be successful, we would be going a bit more back into that direction of the world, right? So where you can't actually gain a lot of meaningful information by attacking some companies, because the companies don't have a lot of stuff, right? Companies that want to know what sort of shoes I like, they only know what sort of shoes I like. They know nothing else about me. So that's back to the whole like the attack service thing. But how this could be attacked is kind of the classical way of how data breaches happen, right? So people send spam and they send links that abuse some security issue in the browser, in the operating system, in the PDF reader, whatever. Then they compromise your system. That's one attack vector, right? It's a lot harder these days than it used to be, but I guess it's still possible to compromise somebody's system. And then, of course, you can quickly upload all that data. Another attack vector would be if somebody gets between you as a user and the software distribution itself, so the polypod. So let's say there's no central source to get it. You can get it from a website, even from the Google Play Store, right? You can get it from lots of places. If you get it from a place that's compromised, then you have a compromised version of the polypod. And again, harmful code could upload your personal data or worse. Another attack vector would be these feature depots, right? Because just like if I run Debian and I add an APT mirror that I shouldn't have trusted, that's going to happen. So that's I guess what Björn meant to say. So it is very important, because we have this system that has all these checks and balances where like bad actors are totally possible, but the system can heal from them, right? Everybody's going to know, okay, we don't get stuff from SourceForge.net anymore, and that's it. Right? So in the same way, we can say, oh, I don't actually want to get stuff from the Poly feature depot anymore. I don't trust that stuff. They've been compromised before. I'm going to use something else now. But this mechanism, of course, only works if there's alternatives, which is why we actively encourage that. We want competition, like very badly. If that answers the question.
Yeah, somehow, and I think the real things should be seen in the implementation and the things that are really the quality of the design and the implementations and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's really down in the details. So yeah, so like in that first scenario, I think we're relatively safe against like a hostile takeover of the system because all the user data is kept encrypted locally. But yeah, devil's in the details. We might have some oversight, but it all falls back on it's still only your door, right? You can't really like those attacks only make economical sense for the attacker if they can get so much data that the value they get is higher than the cost they pay. So I think that's another like thing where we kind of think non-technical about it. It's about the economic incentives of people doing illegal stuff. Like as long as nobody's incentivized to break into all the houses, right? They're trying to pick the houses where something valuable is in. That's sort of the same mechanism we have, but it's an economic mechanism, not a technical one.
And let me ask another question. One thing that is important for me is, when you're storing data is the possibility of corruption. If the data get corrupted, this is a real problem. So you're storing the data in a distributed manner. So are you providing some mechanism to avoid data corruption or things like that? Are you storing on multiple points with, for example, some redundancy or stuff like that?
Honest answer, no. We want to. But yeah, like I said, we're kind of 1% on the way there. So I think there was 2 years of thinking. We started writing code in January, just to put that in perspective. So we kind of have the basics done, but we don't actually have this the synchronization mechanism between different instances, how we call it yet. We have some ideas on how to do that, but to be honest, we don't have it yet. There are stuff, we are looking at something that's called, what's it called? I kind of forgot the details a little bit since I'm also not the one who's going to personally implement that, I hope. But yeah, there are ways of doing distributed data structures with eventual consistency. But to go a bit more in the non-technical realm, there is a notion of backups that we want to have, and it's again based on trust, which ties into a lot of things, right? So let's say I have the polypad, and I know Björn. I met Björn in person. Let's say I trust Björn when it comes to where to get my software from, right? Then I would essentially subscribe to his trust pattern. It's a little bit of a like overcomplicated web of trust model. So if I trust Björn, but I don't trust a random server who offers me free hosting, I would back up my data on Björn's device, at least chunks of it. It works similarly to how file sharing works. Even something like Kazaa or Gnutella, all these protocols have some level of trust algorithm built in, because they avoid trying to download chunks from peers that didn't work out well in the past, right? So they say like, okay, I'm going to first try to get this chunk from someone I trust, but it's not just their trust, it's the network's trust. So let's say I only trust one other peer and they don't have that chunk I want, but they trust the peer transitively where I want to get that chunk. Then I would try to get it there first, basically, because for file sharing, all that matters is, I guess data integrity matters to some degree, but I think the primary thing that matters is, will I have a stable connection here and will it actually work? Will I actually get the file? But that's how we're thinking about doing all this. So Obviously, you would fully trust all of your own devices, I guess, but maybe you wouldn't even trust your work device to keep your personal data, right? So only a subset of your data would be replicated there. So yeah, it is a bit like how I described it, 2 years of thinking, 1 year of implementation. So there's a lot of thoughts, but that's it, I'm afraid.
Yeah, great. And if someone wants to ask, I wouldn't continue, but if there's no other question, I want to ask more.
Let's give everyone the chance. If you have a question, go ahead right now.
Oh, and if you have the issue that Uwe had, where not everybody can hear you, please quickly write in the chat so we know you have a question.
Well, Hassan, then go ahead, I guess.
Okay, so the other thing that I think maybe can be important for you is that when we talk about file sharing, some legal entities and some governments and people from some companies, like media companies, immediately think about copyright violations. So I think something that can be problematic in these kinds of data storage and distributed file storage, no matter the design usage is, can be using in, for example, copyright violation and maybe some say illegal stuff. And if you're following Apple's movement, they are actually storing data encrypted on iCloud. But for some legal investigation, they say that we are checking the hash of the file. So I think that important aspect can be the legal issues. And for example, Apple tried to solve that by somehow get a compromise in privacy. And for example, something that's many users do not accept and do not want. But this is the thing that a company with proprietary software does to make sure that nothing bad happens. I'm not suggesting anything, but I'm asking, have you ever thought of these issues, and what will be your answer or solution or whatever in response to those concerns?
We've thought about it, yes. So I think if you're talking about the Apple example, I think is kind of interesting, because ultimately every company operating in a certain country needs to comply with local law. And I think what Apple did there, at least from my perspective, is a bit lazy but logical, right? So they need something in 2 or 3 countries, they're going to implement it everywhere, right? They want to have one system to maintain, not multiple systems to maintain. And that's where I feel like if one company provides the products, that makes a lot of sense. They probably don't want to build 12 different versions of I don't know, the App Store or the iPhone. That's actually where like some of the, like, let's say the corporate complexity we set up comes in. We did that, and that's also why it took so long to get started, because we had to, like, those checks and balances, there's like, I don't know, in German, we could call it Grundgesetz, all these things, like this, like the constitution sort of. You can't really put that in place after the fact, like 10 years after the revolution. You kind of have to do it right away, right? And then you can build on that. And that's why we thought of the setup first. And this is where the cooperatives come in. So right now we have a single cooperative. It's a European company, so it operates across Europe. And that's where I work, right? The Poly co-op, SCE, whatever. So the European cooperative. And basically, the cooperatives offer the software itself in their respective jurisdiction. So whatever the Polypod, the Poly EU cooperative offers is for the EU market. We want this infrastructure to take over the world. So we want to also have like a Russian cooperative and so on. Where we can, we want to avoid the kind of stuff the local authorities might want from us by by having a system that doesn't allow for it, right? So if we have no way of like getting data from every polypod, nobody can force us to. Or we can build in something like a plausible deniability a mechanism. So you can kind of, depending on what password you unlock the polypod with, you get two different data sets, right? We can generate a fake data set, for example, based on your actual behavior. That sort of stuff. We experimented with that a little bit. But I think the most important point is that if you are a user of the polypods in a certain country, that's not only where that's where we want also any taxes to be paid, right? We wouldn't want to take all the tax, all the profits to Germany, and pay taxes here, make Germany prosper, and the rest of the world goes down, a bit like how US tech giants do it. But basically, if stuff happens on your device, if processing happens on your device, then that is the country where the service happens, and that's where taxes would be paid. And there's a lot of reasons of why we want all these local cooperatives. And yeah, one of these reasons is these cooperatives need to comply with local law. So it is totally possible that we have, let's say, a US cooperative that decides to work with the NSA. What would then happen, and that's where the foundation comes in, is the foundation would say, the foundation is kind of what holds all these cooperatives together. And then the foundation would say, okay, the US guys went rampant. They can do whatever they want. It's all open source, open protocols. They can build what they want, but they cannot call it poly anymore. So that's what I mean by this like self-healing system. Yeah.
Sorry, it's time up. So now.
Okay, well then, thanks to everyone for listening from my side. A pleasure, and have fun with the next talk.
Yeah, so if you do go to our website, you can look at like the PolyWatt events and everything, and get in touch with us if you have any more questions. Happy to talk some more.
Yeah, very nice talk and very nice discussion. Thank you, Björn.
Well, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Hi.
Hi, Daehyun. Okay.
Hi, 신지.
Yeah.
ロシ。日本語って久しぶり。
久しぶりです。Okay. Okay.
안녕하십니까, Korea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So next, your session.
Yeah.
Now on time. Next session is the challenge of using LibreOffice and building local community in Korea. And the speaker is Daehyun. Okay. And I will sharing your video.
Okay.
And after, so Q&A. Time.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
Okay. I will try. Okay, so the video. Okay, I will try sharing the video and start.
Hello, everyone. My name is Daehyun Song, and I'll introduce to my slide title, "The Challenge of Using LibreOffice and Building Local Community in Korea." My name is Daehyun Song, and I'm Korean. I click the next slide. Let me introduce myself. My name is Daehyun Song, and I'm the one of Korean open source contributors, and I'm Korean Foundation member in Korea, and I'm a founder member of LibreOffice Korean team since 2017, and I'm one of the members of LibreOffice Document Foundation in Korea since 2019, and my activity is Korean community management, QA, improve some Korean features on LibreOffice. This presentation is divided into four parts. Part 1 is the challenge of using LibreOffice in Korea, and second, part 2 is building local community in Korea, and part 3 is extras, and last is future works. And now let's start with part 1, the challenges of using LibreOffice in Korea. And in Korea, HWP is HWP format, document format is broadly used in Korea. HWP is abbreviated to the Hangul word processor. It published by Hancom. In Korean name is Hangul computer, and the software brand name is Area Hangul. This character, Area Han, is oscillated Korean syllable, Korean alphabet syllable, but usually said Area Han. And good. In South Korea, both HWP-ML file format, HML, and ODFs are document format standard as a public sector. In the Republic Korea, government adopted open document as a part of Korean industrial standards. Code name is KSX ISO/IEC 26300 in 27. By the way, code name KSX6101 OWPML. It's a HWPML's specification document. However, many of public sector usually using binary file format HWP in Korea. This is screenshots of Ministry of Law in Korea and the Ministry of Education in Korea site. Almost many of Korean public sector use HWP format. Also, academic sector use HWP format. This is it's a bottom site. This Ministry of Law site. Bottom watch you can watch HWP format. Also, Ministry of Education also shows HWP format. This is HWP program screenshot. Many of Korean people use HWP program. It looks like MS Word, but many of Korean in Korea, HWP more used than MS Word because Korean using Korean is very expensive. Easily enter the shows and expression more reachable than MS Word. In Korea, issues if you provisional in Korea, and many of provisionals expect in Korea that is inconvenient in HWP. HWP issues for title is HWP issues for respect in Korea. And KDE Academy 2018 keynote. I watched the keynote. The title is Mapping Crimes Against Humanity in North Korea with free open source software. You can watch this keynote video and slide. below link is YouTube link. And if you click the YouTube link and he describes his North Korea human rights NGO working and using free and open source software data. At the link, he described using free open source software in Korea in a change for beginners. Korea input, front, bank, and online transaction. In addition, Hangul word processor. Here, maybe I think, in my opinion, I think here we deal with the Hangul HWP format, and here HWP software is not open source, so maybe don't deal with the document in Korea. If you search HWP on the Google and MS Word, how to open HWP file in MS Word and file on Mac in Bing and Google, on Mac, on Windows, in Word, on Android, and on iPhone. If you don't install HWP viewer and program, don't open the HWP file format. It's not interoperation, operability, and it's not open source. Now it's not open source software, so it's difficult for many of expect in Korea. I become a university student. In this year, I became the one of the Korean National Open University student. I transferred to Department of Chinese Language and Literature because I try to improve CJK issues on LibreOffice and other free LibreOffice open source software projects. But some subjects give me homeworks, and I watched the university's homework guideline. Only this screenshot only supported on HWP and DOCS and PDF file format. If you submit the homework on my university, only submit the HWP and DOCS and PDF file formats. It's weird. Only submit HWP format. This I watched the guideline. Guideline. The professor insists that only the HWP format must be used when writing homework document because he thinks that HWP is the only standard document format in Korea. But Korea government has already officially adopted SWPML and ODF. But he required to submit the homework. Only use binary file format HWP. It's very weird. But I submit homework using LibreOffice. My university's homework template only give me HWP file format and DOCS file format. But I wrote DOCS file using LibreOffice. This is example. This is screenshot about H3P and MS Word and LibreOffice. Left is H3P and the middle is MS Word and right is LibreOffice. And H3P is only binary content, not easy read file format. No, non-interoperability and proprietary format. But MS Word OSML and LibreOffice ODF file format is text format, easily readable format. And if you can the DOCX file or ODT file format and can easily read the text. 안녕하세요. 안녕하세요. Hello. In Korean name, Korean means hello. And yeah, and then part 2. Now let's start with part 2, building local community in Korea. In last year, Ministry of Science and ICT in Korea adopted ODF file format. Only notice press part. The video news is GDNet News, Korean News. Already opened with any word processor, document utilization. Yes, this is an example of a screenshot about the site. Ministry of Science and ICT in Korea press releases link. Only shows ODF HWP file format download and shows ODT download. Yeah, here. And then last year, 2020 LibreOffice Korea and Japan online seminar has held with the support of NIPA. NIPA is a Korea agency. Thanks to NIPA and LibreOffice Japanese team members, Meguro Jun and Nogata Jun and Enoki Shinji. Thanks. 本当ありがとうございます。And I improve the what can I do for LibreOffice site? Translate text in Korea into Korean. Last year, I collaborate with the LibreOffice Japanese community and team community. I already contributed for Korean version, and I helped to contribute to the site. What can I do for LibreOffice into the LibreOffice Japanese team community member Okata Jun, and he asked me about the how to commit the translation file on what can I do for LibreOffice repository. So I helped. Also, in this year, Nogata Jun, Japanese team member, added and fixed strings, and I translated those strings into Korean. And I participate in the NIPA's event for contributors. NIPA is national. NIPA is obligated to National IT Industry Promotion Agency. It's this annual event for contributor. And next slide is online meeting for LibreOffice contribution, such as translation. And I also fixed the LibreOffice long shows Korean numbering texts. In MS OSM document shows Korean numbering texts guide. But in LibreOffice long show different with different is long shows the numbering texts. Example is number. One is Korean counting, and two is Korean legal. Three is Korea digital, and four is Korean digital too. And I found the long shows on LibreOffice. LibreOffice Writer. This is example of Korean legal. In MS Word and Hangul HWP shows Korean correctly shows Korean legal. 1, 하나, 2, 둘, 2, 둘, 3, 셋, 4, 넷, 5, 5, 다섯, 6, 여섯, 7, 일곱, 8, 여덟, 9, 아홉, 10, 열. But only shows Korean counting on LibreOffice. So left is default, and I fixed this. Also, Korean digital shows and 10 and 100. 10 equal 10. 100 equal 100. But MS Word and HWP shows correctly. But I found actually LibreOffice don't show differently shows it. And I fixed this on LibreOffice. I fixed the Korean digital 2 numbering. And MS Word and HWP shows in Korean 한자. It's Korean Japan. Hanja is a Korean name for Chinese characters. But it shows 10 is 1령, and 100 says 100령, and but the LibreOffice don't shows this. So I fixed the Korean digital too. This is example of one of Korean numbering. The monument is a description of the management of cultural properties. The Korea treasure number 1200, and the rock cave of Buddha state at Dosoram Hermitage of Sonunsa Temple, Buddhist temple. And 1994 for a year, May Truth I submit the Bugzilla's bug and submit the Getty link, and then my source code submitted master branches. And in this Hacktoberfest 2021, I attend my Korean autocorrect data repository. My goal is to collect Korean autocorrect data and broad LibreOffice software in my Korean developers and contributors. And this is example of autocorrect feature on MS Word and HWP. HWP said Korean name 빠른 교정, and MS Word said 자동 교정. And also I collect autocorrect data on LibreOffice. Atlas, free libre open source software in North Korea. Meanwhile, in 29 in KDP site, Korean Linux Document Project site slide. ID Deadstar 08302009. I think on register the question about install application on LibreOffice. He used ID name Deadstar 08302009. I think it means 29 August 30th Deadstar. Maybe he used North Korea style name in program. In North Korea say the program. In South Korea say the program. And then North Korea developer released Delta OS. This is North Korea's Linux distribution, and KD. This is screenshot about Delta 3.0 version. It KD based GUI and Office suite based on OpenOffice or LibreOffice. And currently, Delta 4.0 released 2017. This is link about the Delta OS, and this link describes in North Korea 117,000 server installed Delta OS 4.0, and this is North Korea's Office suite Sogang, name Sogang. It based on LibreOffice or OpenOffice. It based on Delta 3.0. Under North Korea's character set standard, KPS 956 shows 9 multiple encoded Hangul Jamo. Kim Il-sung, founder of North Korea leader, and Kim Jong-il, and now Supreme Leader Kim Jong-un. If you wrote this name and mostly changed and bolded name, this is example. It's funny. And this is article about last year's article in Korea. Delta OS Sogang Office can edit MS Word file. And this is about I watched the curious article teaching open source software in Korea. The one American, Mike Izbicki, went to North Korea to teach a class of master students how to contribute to open source software. I think North Korean can contribute to LibreOffice. I'm seriously thinking about how North Korean developers can contribute to free libre open source software and LibreOffice. And future works is long-term challenges. Spread LibreOffice in Korea and promote LibreOffice and ODF on both North and South Koreas. Listen, thank you for listening to my presentation. Thanks. Any question?
Thank you. So, and checking room. Question is nothing. Okay. 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 So, your slide is now published.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
also downloaded the LibreOffice Conference site using a PDF file.
Okay.
What? You can easily download the PDF file on LibreOffice Conference site.
Okay. Thank you. And maybe time is very short. So yeah, no, no. After 2 minutes later, so next session start. Okay, so Taehyung, so thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you to listen my presentation.
And please, so if other people so want question, please so writing the so Telegram or other. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Taehyung.
Thank you.
Okay, I prepare the so next session. Okay.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good.
Good. Nice.
Well, my presentation starts in 1 minute. I believe we should wait, right? Because people are you're right in time. Is that okay?
Yeah, and your presentation is so live or video?
It's gonna be live. I do.
Live?
Yes.
Okay.
I actually had a video just in case, but
Yeah.
I would prefer to do that live. If that's okay for you.
Okay. So, okay, you are live? Okay. No problem. No, so it's fine.
Okay. So when you say start, I'll just start.
Okay. Now, yes, it's time.
Okay.
Now start.
Okay, thank you very much. I have been watching the presentations here in the LibreOffice conference, and this presentation is probably going to be a little bit different because it's not really a technical presentation. This is a presentation that we gave mostly at schools, at career centers, where there are people that they are interested in technology. So we actually use this presentation to introduce them to the magical world of technology, and also tell them that when we talk about technology today, we are pretty much talking about free and open source software. I am Cesar Brod. I am the Director of Community Engagement for the Linux Professional Institute for the Spanish and Portuguese speaking regions. And while I'm talking to you, I'm looking at the chat in Mattermost. So if you do have some questions, feel free to ask. It's going to be hopefully a very short presentation, although I tend to talk a little bit too much. We tend to divide the world of knowledge in two major categories. The exact science, where we have math, physics, chemistry, and the human science, where we have philosophy, sociology, and history. And we also have the hidden sciences, which is where the information and communication technologies are. In this presentation, I'll try to make a comparison with a character that I am pretty sure that everybody knows, which is Harry Potter, and the career of someone else that most of you, I'm pretty sure they know, which is Linus Torvalds, the creator of Linux. And if you think about it, it probably has some things that have to do with your own career. So this is me by the time of the 10th anniversary of Linux. So it was 20 years ago. And here I am with two people that are going to be part of this story that I'm going to tell you. John Mad Dog Hall to the left and Linus Torvalds to the right. One thing that I also participate in the train-the-trainer programs that we have in LPI, and one of the things that I try to do is to tell them how important it is to tell stories, as long as you aside the technical things that you want to teach, because this helps to get the ideas into the mind, into the head of the students. So this is why this is also going to be a story in here. When we think about Harry Potter, well, and here's the summary of Harry Potter from zero, from where he's born, when he was born, until he got to 10 years old. He was born in July 31st, 1980, and soon after that, in October of the same year, he became an orphan. From that time until 1985, he was living with muggles, regular people, and then finally in 1985, in September 1st, 1991, he was enrolled in Hogwarts. One interesting thing is that 1 month before that, Linus Torvalds announced that he was creating an operating system which then became Linux. I compared that when Harry Potter first joined Hogwarts as the first experience in mob programming that he had with Hermione and Ron. And also, I compared that with the first code that was written a few years before by Linus Torvalds, and the code just printed "Sarah is the best" several times in his screen using the basic programming language. When Harry Potter turned 13 years old, he participated in the Tournament of the Three Magics. And Albus Dumbledore said, opening that tournament, "Eternal glory, this is what awaits the student who wins the Three-Wizard Tournament. But for that, he will have to survive in 3 tasks, 3 extremely dangerous tasks." Well, this is where actually happens. This is what actually happens in the wonderful world of technology. It's not that easy. You have several tasks that you need to fulfill in order to move ahead in your career. They are just not only 3. In 1995, Harry Potter joins the Dumbledore Army. So I compared that with his first project, with your first project in GitHub, GitLab, or other repository. And in June, he gets his ordinary wizarding level. So it is the equivalent of having a Linux Essential certification or entering into the world of LibreOffice, the Document Foundation certifications. In September 7, 1996, he then starts to getting lessons directly from Dumbledore, which I compare of Linus Torvalds having his first encounter with John Mad Dog Hall, which is actually today the chairman of the board of the Linux Professional Institute. Only when he was quite older, like from 26 to 39 years old, was that Harry Potter really had some high-level jobs, let's say that. He became someone in the executive level of some companies. First, in 2007 as the head of our department, and then in 2020 as the head of the Magic Police. So this was just 2 years ago when Harry Potter became the head of the Magical Police. A lot of people tell me, especially when I get into these career events, is that in our world, in the world of technology, it's very difficult for one to know what he or she will do in the future, because things are always changing. But if you are really looking into what is going on in your field, you'll see that the future is not that difficult to predict. So this is an article. It was released in December 1999. And here it tells about the link will be there for you also. I believe the organization will provide you with a copy of this presentation. But this is by science fiction writer Dave Gerrold. And he took a look at the things that were happening in 1999, and he actually predicted that you would have a very fast and capable computer in your pocket. And he called this a PITA, a personal information telecommunications agent. This means that he pretty much is telling us here what the cell phone is right now. So if you are looking into what is going on, you can actually imagine what the future will be and will be prepared for the future. I also, this is from a screenshot from a web page here in Brazil very recently. And I always tell people, well, be very careful when you look into ads like that. Here pretty much says that you are going to learn the whole science technology in a very short time. In this case, it's going to be 1 month. And if you look into the structure of the course, basically class 1 to 12 is Windows for beginners. Then using Gmail, 4 more classes, and just 1 class of Google, of how to use Google Drive. Of course, you are not going to become an ICT professional by taking this course. And there are several offers. You probably come from very different regions of the world, and you have these offers like learn data sciences in the weekend. This just doesn't work. I do like, though, this example from John Motion, and he published his studies on GitHub, and he called this the Coding Interview University. He wanted to start working for Google. So he studied for 8 to 12 hours a day for several months. He actually studied 8 months preparing for a Google interview. What happened is that he did not got the offer from Google that he wanted, but instead he used the same things that he had learned to get a job on Amazon. So you see, 8 months, 8 to 12 hours a day. So this is really a serious way of studying into to get into the wonderful world of technology. There's really no shortcuts. There's really no tricks. I will just make a few calculations in here. So if you guys do remember from your high school, the rule of 3, or maybe elementary school, 10 hours a day, 8 months. So if you have 10 hours a day to study, you need to study for 8 months to get your job on Google or Amazon, or you can apply the same kind of thing for any kind of company that you want to work for. And this is, of course, it will vary, but it's a good rule of thumb rule, or rule of a thumb to know how much you need to study. So you have 5 hours a day, you study 8 months, so you get to the rule of 3. And I actually created a small calculator for you, which is the study time calculator that you can access here in this link. It's a very simple Google spreadsheet, and I use it a lot to tell young people the real time they will need to study to get a good job. And of course, you should learn about free and open technologies for several reasons. It's easy to build on top of what already exists. Even if you think that you have a very good idea, if you look into GitHub, GitLab, and things like that, you see that at least part of your idea is being built by other people. So use the repositories, use the search engines to look into things that are closer to what you want to do, or if there aren't things that are actually similar to what you want to do, and then you can contribute or modify that project, and this is what free and open software allows you to do. It is more secure. Eric Raymond, in this book, The Cathedral in the Bazaar, he mentioned that, and he called it the Linus law, given enough eyes, our bugs are shallow. So when the code is open, when you have access to the source code, a lot of people are using, even if people cannot actually, all of them, program. As soon as they find a bug and they tell people about the bug, there will be a lot of people that know how to program and will be able to fix that bug. If there's a problem with security, the same kind of thing. Security is so important that even in our most basic certification, Linux Essentials, we cover quite a lot of security. Well, it's easy to access. You know, you are in the Document Foundation, the LibreOffice maintainers. You just download. There's nothing dark between the lines of the license. You just download and you start to use it. It's very easy to adapt, and we just had a very good example in the previous presentation on how LibreOffice is able to work with several languages, even writing vertically, horizontally, from right to left to right. And this is thanks to a huge amount of contributors that it has from people that are in these different geographies. Another example here, you guys know that GIMP is the equivalent of Photoshop in our community. There is a project that's actually led by a Brazilian, which is called PhotoGIMP. It is GIMP, but with an interface that will make easier for people that comes from Photoshop to start using GIMP. The adherence to standards, and this is something that's extremely important for both the Linux community, the LibreOffice community, for all of the free and open source community. The internet actually was created thanks to a mechanism called request for comments, where people would contribute to today's existing standards, starting with the naming of hosts that we have an example in here. And it doesn't need to be serious like the RFC for the naming of hosts. It's pretty much became a poetry at the end. But the TCP/IP evolved from the request for comments and other things like that. The internet exists thanks for standards, and also, of course, ODF is a very good example of a standard. If this is not enough to convince some people to come into the wonderful world of free and open source software, if we look into the world today, like pretty much everything uses free and open source software. Here is an example. This is a tweet from Elon Musk. Elon Musk himself is responding to a tweet where someone asked about the Linux kernel update that they did for the cockpit system that was running on SpaceX. So if the CEO of a company such as SpaceX, Tesla, the Boring Company, is interested in replying himself tweets regarding Linux, it's a signal that we all should pay attention to free and open source software. We also know that the cloud is populated with pretty much the totality of free and open source software. The 500 supercomputers that most perform in the supercomputer world, they run on top of Linux. All of the Internet of Things, the mobile stuff, they are pretty much on top of free and open source software. So this is really a career that people should consider. We just set up a partnership with the development, the document, I'm sorry, with the LibreOffice maintainers. And one of the reasons that we set up that partnership is because we have a very similar mission. Like the Linux Professional Institute promotes the use of free and open technologies by elevating the people who work with them. And listening to some of the presentations in here, what I can see is that you are all the time really elevating the people that work with the Document Foundation, with LibreOffice. We are a non-profit organization founded in 1999 in Canada. Our group is very small. We are about 50 people all over the world. So we do work with our regional partners, that are all over the world, and we are independent of Linux vendors and distribution. And well, since quite a long time right now, we have been living from our certifications. There is no other type of income into the LPI profession, into the Linux Professional Institute, other than our certifications. So this means that people actually like our certifications. And even during the pandemic times, a lot of new partners have reached out to us in order, because people discovered that you can now, well, they knew that, but the social isolation times actually enhanced that knowledge that you can sell your services to all over the world. And certifications become very important as credentials to show people that you actually know the kind of thing that you're saying that you know. Here is just a summary of our certifications tracks. We have the essential tracks. Today we have Linux Essentials. Soon we'll have web development essentials. Then we have our Linux Professional track, which starts with LPIC 1, the Linux Administrator, then the Linux Engineer, LPIC 2, which is actually a Linux networked administrator. Then we have our specialties, LPIC 3. Now we have Security, Mixed Environment, Virtualization, and High Availability. And soon we'll have some other specializations also. Then in the Open Technology, we'll have the DevOps Tools Engineer, and this already exists, and the BSD Specialist. The BSD Specialist is because the BSD, the Berkeley Software Division, which produced the FreeBSD, OpenBSD, and NetBSD, they thought that they should concentrate on their BSD-based distributions and let someone else take care of their certifications. So they came to LPI, and we adopted their certification, and we actually put their certification in our standards. I am pretty sure that part of our collaboration with the Document Foundation is actually to, if not having some of your certifications coming into the LPI tracks, at least work together to improve our certifications together, because you guys already have a lot of experience into that. And also a lot of C-level executives in the companies, they are facing with more and more free and open source software inside their companies, and most of the times they are not sure how to hire free and open source services, products, and people who work with that. So we are preparing the BOSS certification, which is the Business of Open Source, which is going to be a C-level certification. This is where we are in the world. So we are in all of the areas that are in yellow. And we do hope that we soon, all the world will be covered in yellow. Soon before the pandemic started, we were working with Cuba, and we had our first people certified in Cuba. Unfortunately, the social isolation does not allow us to move too much, but we are still developing works with Cuba and, of course, several other countries in the world. Getting closer to the end, another question that I receive lots of the time is, should I learn to program? The quick answer is yes, you should learn how to program. Even companies, and here is just one example, Disney, which has its project Rosie 2.0, that other than including women into the ICT industry, something that inside LPI you also try to do, actually is part of our objectives and key results, to work with inclusion and diversity. So we are working some programs like that. And this project by Disney here, that it's an example, they are training their office workers on Python, so they will be able to move up in their career inside the company. Some hints, like if you are going to know how to program, start learning programming logic. There are several resources on YouTube. Once you look on YouTube and other places, once you learn programming logic, we'll be able to program in pretty much all languages. Choose a programming language. Don't get into the fight of, oh, this is better, this is better. Look into some project that appeals to you. And what is the programming language that this project uses? So start by learning that. As soon as you learn one language, you will be easily transferring your skill to another language. Start programming with a modern IDE. I am kind of a big fan of the Jupyter Notebook, so you can take a look at that in the internet. I like the fact that it is web-based, and also that there are several examples in there for you to start. And tell everyone what you're doing. Linus Torvalds used to say, release early and often. Some people think that, well, I have this idea, I'll hide this idea, and when it's ready, I'll show it to the world. You know, the ideas are there. They are everywhere. And if you don't start working your idea, some other people will. So tell everyone what you are doing, and by doing that, start building your portfolio. It's important that you have your work published in the web, so people will be able to look into it and actually know how you are advancing in your career. Most companies are learning that rather than hiring people with a specific knowledge, it's more valuable to hire people that are able to learn anything. Just the URL for the Jupyter Notebook. If you also look for Octoverse on github.com, you see projects that are trending and things that you should look into. And I want to allow you some time for questions. So this is me, cbrod@lpi.org. This is Jolly Villavisa, who also helped me with this presentation, the first time that we provided this presentation. And you will find me in all social networks with the nickname of Cesar Brod. So feel free to ask questions now or send me an email. I do receive a lot of email, but I do reply to all of them. So if it takes some time for me to reply to your email, just forward the same email to me. It will bump into the top of my inbox again, and I will reply to you. Thank you very much for the LibreOffice community, for the document Foundation to allow me to be speaking here to you. Sorry, my voice is still a sleepy one. Although it's 9:30 here in Brazil, I was in another conference until late night, but I wanted to make sure that I will be here talking to you. And with me in the chat are more people from LPI, including, I am seeing Juan Ibarra in here, and Hernan Pachas. Yesterday, we also had Ivan Leibovitz, so we are trying to be as present as possible here in your wonderful conference. Thank you very much. I'm open for questions.
Thank you for presentation. So, any question?
I'm looking into the chat and I'm not seeing, and in Telegram, I'm not seeing any questions. So, or I scared people.
Comment is loving the presentation with this, or yes, or only comment.
Great. Well, again, thank you guys. Hopefully in the next editions of your conference, and after, we'll be talking with the Document Foundation the following weeks and find out ways where we can work together. We are just starting our partnership. I believe as our mission is very close. Foundation and LPI, we'll have several things to do in the future. And also, you know, pretty much everyone that uses Linux in the desktop is also a user of LibreOffice. So I believe we'll find a lot of creative ways of getting our community work together. And as you invited us for your event, we'll surely invite you guys for our events. And well, we'll just talk and see what we can do together.
So sorry, one question in chat. How has LPI? Sorry, can you see the chat? How has LPI? I don't know. See the sentence.
Can you paste the question here in the chat?
Okay.
How has LPI dealt with the problem of people thinking Linux is not good?
Yeah.
This is a very, very good question. And the answer to that has become easier and easier and easier as we move on. We basically tell people, well, we thought at some point that we would also dominate the desktop computing, which we didn't. Like, there's still a lot more Windows in the desktop computers, but we now have more desktop computers. There are more Linux desktop computers than Mac OS computers. So we are important in this market. But if you consider the whole mobile computing, almost the totality of the tablets and the mobile phones, they are running Android. And Android is a Linux distribution. If you look into everything that's running in the cloud, more than 85% runs on Linux. If you look into the 500 fastest computers in the world, they are running Linux. Linux is the only operating system in Mars, and Linux dominates the servers around the globe. Like Starlink, soon going to be more than 100,000 satellites. They are all running Linux. So if Linux is not good, it wouldn't be the majority of these things. If you think about any kind of embedded system in cars, in your vacuum at your home, they are all running Linux. So if it was not that good, like it would be Windows or Mac OS running this kind of things. But it is Linux. So Linux really is really, really good.
Okay.
I think that we have reached our time in here. I'm glad I was able to finish in half an hour, as you guys asked me. But you know, I provide you my email. I'll be looking, and both myself and my friends from LPI will be present in the Telegram chat. So do feel free to ask questions for us.
Thank you for your presentation, Cesar.
Thank you. Chinji, am I
Yes.
pronouncing the name? Okay, Chinji.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Chinji.
Thank you, Cesar.
Bye bye, all. See you soon.
Yeah. Okay. And so 30 minutes break now. Okay. Hello, Michelle.
Here I am. Sorry for the delay.
Okay, so
Okay, let me check the schedule. So the next
Yeah.
session will be within 2 minutes,
yes,
and this will be
She's,
how to pack writer forwards and backwards, episode 2 by Michael Stahl. I can see him. I guess it's MST in the room.
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Good. Yes, that's me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, time.
Yes, thank you really much, Shinji, for your effort. And
Okay. And starting now session, how to debug writer forward and backward, episode 2. And Michelle start. Okay, so now starting the recording video. Okay, Michelle.
wait.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, please start.
Okay.
Shinji, are you going to start it, or am I supposed to do it?
No,
Okay.
Gabriel, you're supposed to be in room 2, not room.
So,
I'm sorry.
welcome to another episode of our debugging tutorial, where we are going to look at some video that I've recorded a very long time ago. This is a regression bug reported to me by QA, so it crashes in release 6.4, but worked in previous releases. So we are trying to reproduce this bug that I've shown on the title, and the first thing we are doing here is we are using the RR debugger to record the bug, and in order to reproduce it we are going to have to load this document and then perform some copy and paste operations. So first the whole document is selected, then it is copied to the clipboard, and then we create a new document and paste the clipboard into that. And so far things are working fine. And now it is pasted, and we click the undo button, and things crash now as expected from the bug description. And so now that we have recorded the crash, we try to get the Office out of the way and start debugging by using the RR replay command. This starts a GDB session, and now we can start by first turning on the logging to a text file in GDB, which is a very useful feature.
To be honest,